Hello and welcome back to SketchUp Assist. In this video today, a little different. We're going to put the MCP server in Claude through a pretty rigorous test here. So what we're going to be doing is grabbing a couple pieces of furniture from the website of Restoration Hardware. We'll grab the HTML, we'll grab the images. We're going to drop those into Claude and we're going to ask it to go create some 3D models for us. And what we're going to end up with are some models like this. Now note, I've added this model here to this scene. We're not creating the scenes with Claude, we're just creating the 3D model for the furniture. Then we're going to do a quick and dirty render, nothing super sophisticated on that scene, just to kind of demonstrate what's possible here end to end. Again, the rendering a bit hands-on and manual. We asked Claude to do a couple of things to fix the 3D model for the render, but just to be clear, I'm doing the render effectively manually here. But we are using Claude to go through the full process of creating the 3D model. So this 3D model you see here, again, Claude's created that for us with some prompt. Now, this takes a little bit of coaching, and you'll see actually in the second piece we work out, which is this piece here, that the workflow is kind of important. So in the future, we'll be going into this a bit more and figuring out how to work out that workflow. It is a bit much to expect Claude to take a few pictures and a few dimensions from a website and go design something this complex. And so I'll walk you through kind of what we're doing there. So should be pretty interesting. Hopefully you stick around. Okay, let's dive in. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to grab a couple of furniture pieces, and I'll just use Restoration Hardware here. You can use obviously whatever you want. And what I'm going to do is just see how well Claude can come in and recreate these pieces. We'll look at a couple. We'll start out with this. I just kind of randomly picked these French contemporary sideboard. Right now, because this is a dynamically loaded page, Claude can't go scrape that. I think there's probably some opportunities there, but what we're going to do is come in and save this web page. Okay, so I've saved the web page, but now it's probably not going to have pictures in it. So what we want to do is come in here and save all the images. Okay, so I've saved all the images. I have the HTML. There are some other files here that I'm not currently using, but they could be of value. Here are all the images that I saved that were on the site. And what I want to do is start off with the HTML. Okay, so I'm going to just upload the HTML and ask it to get the dimensions first. And of course, the item does come in multiple dimensions, and so it found the options, the depth and the height should be pretty consistent across those. So what we want to do now is dive in and ask it to start modeling, and we'll probably just do the 60-inch wide version. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the images in now. Now here you could really probably help things along by giving a better prompt than what I have here, but what I want to show you is what Claude does if you just kind of give it minimal information. And I'll talk a little bit more in just a second about what I mean by more of a prompt. Okay, so it's obviously pulled the dimensions. It's going to create a 4-door version. It sees the tapered legs, and it's going to go with a wide oak. Obviously, if we go to render this, we would probably modify that anyway. So. Okay, so it's starting off with an empty box here. The dimensions 60 inches, 18. Now, I have to note, like I think with some coaching, it could probably get close to a model that you could use to go into a wood shop and try to build this. But by default, it's just going to create a visual basically. So you'll have to coach it to get it to a point where, for example, it would use panels to, to create this carcass, for example. Okay, so it started an attempt, and then it scratched that effort and came back. It's trying a second attempt. It's complaining about SketchUp not responding. There's nothing else running, so I'm not sure if it's sending it um, too many calls, and it's kind of overwhelming it, or what's happening. Now it's putting a recessed rail under the carcass, which doesn't make any sense. Just bring the image up here so we can keep it for reference. So what it really should be doing, looks like there may be a panel on the inset. It should really be creating a frame here around the outside, and on the outer sides of the frame, those are continuous with the legs. So I guess this outer post effectively creates the legs. Now, I don't have a good enough image of the end to see how it's really constructed, but my suspicion is these are basically, I don't know, roughly 2x frames that have a panel inset. You can kind of see a little bit of a panel on the top side there. And so you can kind of see here what it's creating is pretty generic and not really representative of the piece that we're trying to build at this point. So what I'm going to do is stop it here, and I'm going to provide a little more guidance. So again, I think the prompt's going to be critical here to kind of get it on the right path, as opposed to letting it kind of try to freeform and figure it out on its own. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to provide some close-ups for it. The other thing that doesn't help is the finish on this makes it, I think, a little difficult to detect some of the details. And now let's go back in and provide it with these two images. Okay, and now let's modify the prompt. Okay, so here's that center panel. Again, it's kind of difficult to detect this. I can see how it's a little challenging. And I want to do one more. I want to show it how the side panel becomes the legs. So I'm going to grab a close-up of that. So I'm going to provide it this detail here. Now, I won't be terribly upset if it just creates basically these 18-inch wide panels that form the outer sides of the carcass. I think that would be a completely acceptable result. And actually, as I look closer, really the miters are only on the top. The bottom is a butt joint as well. So we may want to go back in and update the prompt to reflect that. Okay, looking decent. It does have the legs as a separate entity here, but I could live with that. Okay, it's going to create a face frame. Oh, interesting. It thinks the handles were routed. Okay, so we'll want to stop it. Let's stop it here before it does that. And let's see if we can get a better image of the handles. Now here's a better image of the handles. Unfortunately, it's on the dark frame. The contrast is a little challenging, I would think, but let's go ahead and see if this helps it. Yeah, pull bar. See, it was able to understand a little better than I could explain. And we'll fix these issues on this face frame. Not loving these handles, but unfortunately, we just don't have a really good picture to give it that has very clear contrast. Okay. And we don't have good details to know if like the length of this leg is good or not. It's purely going to be visual. But in the end, I mean, without going in and grabbing lots of measurements on this piece, I think this all in all is starting to look pretty good. Let's fix this face frame. The face frame. Okay, so it fixed the fleshiness. Again, I don't know that this is the accurate design. We just don't have enough information on the top of this. So I'm more concerned with it getting kind of the face of this thing somewhat similar to what we're trying to build. And again, I'll add this back in for reference. So I think when it did the push-pull, for whatever reason, it moved those out too far, but let's ask it to correct it. Yeah. Okay, so here's what we have. Again, not perfect. Let's see if we can do a little refinement. It would be really great if we had some images where where we could kind of see the sides a little more. But what I suspect, based on what we can see, these side stiles are actually almost probably square. So same length, width, whatever, thickness, and it extend all the way down to the feet. So I would probably say we'll have it keep this 2-inch diameter, but make the face frame 2 inches thick. And we'll have it shift the panels. And we're going to have it replicate the face frame on the back, because I'm pretty sure that's the design. I'm pretty sure the design is basically almost like maybe 1.5 or 2 by material square that forms the full frame in the front, and there's another frame in the back, and then there are panels inset. That's the way we'll make it. I think it's that way, but again, we're guessing a little bit here. Okay, and then the big thing, though, really the sort of defining, one of the defining designs of this is the fact that these feet are integrated in to the side. So we're going to see if we can get it to work that out. Okay, let's see if that helps it. All in all, I think with the face, though, feeling pretty good about that. No, it's going to wipe out the entire model. This is something that we'll need to address at some point. It could have easily shrunk those panels down and made a copy of the front frame, but what are you going to do? I also think there should be a 2x2 that's probably connecting the front and the back frame, but we'll probably leave that alone for now. Looking pretty good so far. Again, I would think that, you know, if you wanted to do this sort of at scale, so to speak, you would probably come in and generate some prompts. It's really fair to expect that you need to give it some guidance on how to construct this, and that simply from the pictures, you know, it's gonna struggle. So you could come in and kind of give it some of the core components. Now there's an issue with this miter here. I'm not sure which one is miscut. Okay, it looks like the top rail is not mitered. Oh no, it is mitered. That's mitered. Okay, it looks like it just left some stray lines in there. Okay. Okay, that is looking better now. Now it looks like the miter on this is just cut on the inside, and it's probably on the back side as well. So we're going to ask it to fix that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give it a close-up of the leg. Okay, so we've got this close-up of the leg here. Now, in this case, it's deleted the stiles. I don't think it was doing that purely to remove the lines. It is recreating the feet. And so in that case, I would probably have not deleted it as a human making that modification, but I can see where it might be easier for it. Okay, some interesting geometry here. So it's struggling a little bit to create a clean geometry. This is really kind of problematic. Let's see if we can coach it through this. It's still thinking. Okay, so I think it's going to take another shot. Okay. If we can get these feet created just straight down, then we could probably work it through just tapering the inside of the inside of the feet. Messed up the positioning again. Okay, it knows it, so it extruded in the wrong direction. Okay, perfect. Okay, it looks good. So on the inside of the feet, we're just going to put a taper, basically starting at the bottom rail down. It's probably 1 inch. I don't think it can do, let's ask it before you do anything. Perfect. All right. Correct. Okay, so it should be, I think this makes sense. Okay, so perfect, it fixed that. And now it should try to add a line here and then move this line in, which should give us the taper we want. I think that's the right height. Let's just check. It's actually z equals 6. So it got pretty close here, but it did for some reason, even though we told it to use the bottom of the bottom row, use the top. So the z equals 8 dimension. So it's looking pretty close though. Okay, so all in all, this is not a super complicated one. And yes, we did have to coach it a bit, but we were able to come in and create something that from a geometric standpoint looks pretty similar. Now, of course, we didn't have all the detailed measures here, and we don't have a lot of details on what's happening outside of the front. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. A lot of the character of this has to do with the wood. Clearly, that's missing here. Let's work on these pulls. Okay, that's looking pretty good. They're set too far off the doors, but that's fine. It's a pretty easy fix. And they're not quite centered either. Good. Look good. Look great. Okay. Now, of course, we could easily come in and just shift these. Nothing says that Claude has to do all the driving. And in some cases, it's probably going to be a lot faster to come in and address some of these things. Okay, so I think we'll stop there with this one. You know, all in all, I think this looks pretty good. I think this is probably a longer one, so the proportions look a little different. We built the 60-inch here. Now it took quite a bit of coaching, quite a bit of prompting. Again, I wouldn't have went through the first couple of iterations. You know, the way to do this from the start is to go ahead and provide it a fair amount of guidance in what you can describe to it. I think the other thing that matters is that some of the images that we're working with aren't great in terms of the amount of contrast that's there, and it just kind of makes it hard to pull some of the details out for Claude still. But all in all, you know, we could probably come in with a clean prompt and get this in maybe 2-3 shots, maybe. Especially, you know, if we think about the handles, there really just are no great images of the handles here. The one with the door open, still not great because of the contrast. If you could find the independent handles, there's two things. You could provide the dimensions of the handles. That would just kind of solve the problem. Or better images that show the handle from multiple directions so that it can kind of figure out what it's trying to draw. So we're going to stop here. We're going to start with another one just to kind of show that, hey, this thing's not just creating a box with inset cabinets. We'll do something with a little bit different design now. Okay, now we're going to have a shot at something a little more complicated. And we're going to take a different approach this time. We're going to start off with just a 2D design. The reality is, you know, the critical piece we're trying to get here is the face, right? We don't have clear images of the side, as you can see here. I'm assuming there's a panel inset inside these two sets of stiles, but without having a real clear image, it's just kind of hard to tell. But really, again, not so concerned with that. What I want to try to do is figure out what's the best workflow to get to a 3D model that captures his face as accurately as possible. So let's get started. We'll start off in a similar way, read the HTML for the Francois sideboard. Let's give it that file. So I've already gone through and saved the HTML, and I've saved a number of images here. So we'll grab this first. You could load the images in one step. And so what we're going to do is Claude can create, SVG graphics. We're going to, with basically kind of a schematic. So what we're going to try to do is get it to lay out the top rail, the middle rail, the bottom rail, and kind of get the carcass laid out, and then come in and insert the posts on the sides. So let's grab these dimensions. We'll probably just create the 48-inch. Okay, so we'll give it some images. So we'll be working in the Claude desktop interface here for a few minutes. Okay, let's see. Interesting. There's a gap here, so we'll need to work through some of this. Now I don't know what these dimensions are. They look like they're probably at least 1 inch. So we'll probably ask it just to create those as 1 inch. And let's take a quick look. The top is probably about the same thickness, so we'll just go with 1 inch. Make the top 1 inch. And directly below that, the top rail is 1 inch. No space between them. Then the drawer faces. Now the question is, how thick should they be? The height of this is 34. They're definitely not a quarter of the total height. Maybe a 1/6 to an 1/8. Let's go with 6 inches. The proportions on this are not right. You can see it looks much higher than it is wide, but the important part is that the dimensions are right. So it's 48 inches wide, 34 high. This looks pretty good. There's some space between the posts here, so we'll address that. There shouldn't be a gap there. Squeezing everything in, it's kind of hard to tell if the proportions are right, but we can go over here to DevMunch and upload the SVG and see if it's any better. Oh, no, not much better. Okay, so in the SVG itself, the proportions just aren't right. Okay, but that's fine. As long as it does know the actual dimensions, it's just not drawing it to scale. Okay, you have gaps. So there should obviously be no gaps in along this space, and so okay, but it does appear to have the mitered doors, the mitered face frames around the doors and the drawers, I should say. And I think the one other thing, I believe the proportion on this is a little smaller, so we'll probably ask it to make these 1.5 inches. They shouldn't be overwhelming on the piece. Okay, that's looking better. I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we're getting some framing here. It's looking pretty good so far. Let's grab the, okay. It does have a little mistake here. It has a center divider, which doesn't exist, so we'll ask it to remove that. Okay. So the doors are setting a little far out here, so those need to be pulled back. And okay, there we go. So give us a little color here. We'll let it wrap up and we'll start refining some of this. Oh, it's got to add the pull still, I believe. So, okay, so here's what we have so far. We want to recess these panels back a little bit. The rails and side panels. Okay, that looks better too. So if we get back to our reference here, it looks like it's doing a lot better job. And I'm getting pretty close to being content with this. The last thing we'll do is just create the little flares around the where the stiles intersect the rails. Okay, looking better, looking much better. Okay. Feeling pretty good with this. Let's try to add the flares, and let me see if I can get a clean image of the flare to provide it. Okay. A half inch might be a little much. Let's take that down. Okay. Yeah, that looks better. And it looks like everything is pretty flush there. Okay. So I think the last thing we need to get now then is just the door pulls, and we'll put a taper on the bottom of the posts. Okay, looks like it did a great job on those feet, so I'm really pretty pleased with the cabinet itself. Just working on the pulls, and let's grab our reference image here. So we have the flares here. We have roughly the right design. Of course, we don't have all these detailed measures, but all in all, it's feeling pretty good. There's our pulls, and so I think I'm pretty happy with this. What I want to do now, a little bit extended, a little bit of an aside, but what I want to do is throw this into V-Ray real quick, just to kind of demonstrate what you're getting out. It's a little tough to compare to the actual image because the the natural finish and everything. Now, I'm not going to do a super in-depth rendering on this. But enough to just kind of see how it looks, get a feeling for what it would look like going from prompt-driven design into a 3D model that you're trying to get a realistic rendering on. Okay, so I've dropped the sideboard we just created into this little room setup here. And we're going to do a quick render just to kind of see how things look. I won't get into the render details this time. I'll drop another video on exactly how I set all this up. There are a couple of things I want to demonstrate, and I want to see if Claude's able to help fix them. So we have a render going now. Let's open it up and take a look. Now, as it's starting to come in, you'll notice that it's kind of hard to discern the drawer from the middle rail from the top of the doors here. Now, this is the model exactly as it was. We just pulled it over and dropped it in here into this room scene. And again, what we're seeing is you just can't quite discern these differences, or where the door stops and so on, where the rail starts and so on. So we're going to ask Claude if he can fix that a little bit. So while that's rendering, I don't need to wait for it to finish. Actually, I'll stop it. There's no sense in wasting compute on that. Now, it's kind of impressive. I mean, this language is a little confusing. Talking, top of the bottom of the top, so on. But Claude should be able to handle that pretty well. Now, I think the others, I'm not so worried about the ones on the sides. I think that'll be enough. We'll see if a 1/16 of an inch is enough, or we need to introduce a little more. The other thing that we're asking it to do is now look inside the scene where there's a lot more going on. All right, let's apply the material. Oh, here's another thing. Let's ask it to miter these because we'll want to apply some different materials. So let's go in for the drawer face frames and the door face frames. Align to the corners so the faces are separate. So the faces of the stiles and rails are separated. The reason we're going to do this is that one of the things you want to do is when you're rendering this wood grain is to run the wood grain in the direction of the board. So for a stile, we'll want the wood grain running this way. For the rail, we'll want the wood grain running this way. You wouldn't have, for example, you wouldn't have these rails with the wood grain running this way. You're typically going to have the wood grain running along the length of the board. It could have simply put a diagonal line across the corners, but as we typically find, it loves to rebuild things. The only issue is it looks like it's introduced some gaps here now, so that's a problem. Okay. Okay, we have the updated doors here. We've fixed the issues. We've reapplied our materials to the faces. Again, the reason we wanted to break these stiles and rails out is so that um, we could apply materials that have basically rotated bump maps so that the grain runs in the right direction. It helps to see these mitered corners. The reality is, and you'll see when we run the render, you sometimes want to come in and over accentuate the miters here, such that if you zoomed in, you would be like, those are really bad miters. But V-Ray needs a decent sized gap to be able to kind of, so that it shows up in the render. But at any rate, let's start the render now and see how things have improved. Here's our window. Here's our V-frame buffer. So while this is finishing, to be clear, we didn't really use Claude to do the rendering component. Claude built the 3D model. We dropped that 3D model into a photo room, effectively a virtual photo room here that I had set up. And then we did ask Claude to fix some things that were important for the render. And those things were to break the stiles and the rails into separate faces, and to introduce some gaps in between the rails and the doors and the drawers, so that you can see the distinctions here, so that you can see the boundaries between those entities. And it did so. 1/16 of an inch is pretty good. You could probably go a little bit more; it wouldn't hurt. But it's definitely enough that you can now see the boundaries there. Probably wouldn't hurt to have a little bit bigger gap between the doors as well. It's a little faint here at the bottom, but again, we're not. I'm not belaboring this. Was really just to kind of demonstrate that constructing this piece of furniture with Claude through the process of getting the 3D model is creating a model that provides a pretty nice render here. Obviously, when it comes to rendering, there's a lot more around the settings. I'm certainly not an expert in the rendering, but this was just to kind of show, like, rough first pass what you can get out of these models. So that's it. We'll stop for there. It's a very long video. If you stuck around, really appreciate it, and stay tuned for more in this space. Thanks. Hey, if you're finding the channel useful or interesting, please consider subscribing. And if you have any feedback for any of our content, please consider leaving comments. Thank you.